Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give folks a few minutes to get on. So just want to encourage you all to introduce yourselves in the chat. And if you would like to use closed captioning, you can select the closed captioning option at the bottom of your screen. As we're going through, if you have questions, please use the Q&A button that's at the bottom of the screen. That'll help us make sure that we get those questions answered. Sometimes our chat can get pretty full with saying hello to folks from everywhere. So just want to make sure that when you do have questions, those are coming through the Q&A piece. So thank you, Sue, for getting us started off. Hello, Rick. Welcome. It's great to have you all here. I'm going to type my stuff in here too while I can. So, all right. Welcome, welcome. I think we've got both coasts represented, and now the middle of the country is showing up, which is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you might be at. We'll give folks a few minutes to get logged in before we get started. And as you can see, folks are introducing themselves in the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourselves, say hi to your friends from across the UCC. If you have questions that come up during the webinar, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. That's going to help us most accurately capture the questions that you have and get those attended to. If you would like to use closed captioning, enable closed captioning on the bottom of your Zoom window to get that set up as well. So welcome, welcome. It's great to have you all here. We'll give folks just another couple of minutes to get settled in. Great to have so many folks joining us. I think I saw Reverend Dr. Brian Murray. Great to see you on here. Looking forward to seeing you at Synod. I think I saw Reverend Rachel Pryor as well. So great to have you all here. Welcome, Peggy. Welcome, Daniel. Great to have folks here. Hi, Monica. Uh, Wonderful to have first-time delegates. So it's the first Synod is always a memorable one. And I live in the KC Metro, so I'm particularly excited that you all are coming to Kansas City, and excited to host you here. It looks like the entry is slowing down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And just because I am now going to say it one more time, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. That'll make sure that we get to those questions. Please use the chat to have conversations, to comment, say hello to one another. That's all super helpful. Harder to track questions as those come up in the chat though. And if you'd like to use closed captioning, you can do so at the bottom of your screen. You can enable that closed captioning. So we do have a recording of our first webinar available on the UCC YouTube channel. So if you end up having to pop off early, you can find that all of this same information on that resource as well. So, and with that, we'll get started with some introductions, or with the agenda and then the introduction. So, again, welcome. Here's our plan for this afternoon. We will do some introductions of everyone who is a panelist today. Our friend Liz will open us up in prayer. Then Kate is going to talk us through the proposed changes about director terms. We'll have some time for question and answers specifically around the proposed bylaws amendments around those director terms. And then I will go through and offer an overview of the proposed changes connected to unified governance. And then we'll have specific Q&A time for those questions and concerns as well. And with us, in addition to the board members that are panelists, we also have Heather Kimmel, who is General Counsel for the United Church of Christ and Secretary of the General Synod. She is an all-around rock star, and we are so fortunate to have her in our denomination. and she will be able to help answer some additional questions if necessary. We also just want to give a shout out to Andrea Burst, who is our tech support. She's fantastic, and we are excited that she will be at Synod as well this year as a recorder. So be sure to find Andrea and say hi when you're in Kansas City. So again, Julia Gahn, my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am an authorized minister in the Kansas-Oklahoma Conference. I serve Peace United Church of Christ in Alma, Kansas, and I live in Lenexa, which is a suburb on the Kansas side of the Kansas City Metro. Now I'm going to hand it to Janice.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janice Murray. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a lay person who is a member of New Covenant Community United Church of Christ, based in Catonsville, Maryland, which is right outside of Baltimore. Good to see everyone today. Kate?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate West. I go by the pronouns she, her, hers, and I am the senior pastor at First Congregational United Church of Christ in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, in the middle of the cranberry bogs, and formerly served churches in Iowa and Nebraska. So it's good to see so many folks. I'm going to turn it over to Liz.
Thanks, Kate. I'm Liz Brunton. I'm a lay leader at Ascension UCC in Norristown, Pennsylvania, which is right in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. I've been serving on the board since 2023, and I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I hope we have a great session.
All right, thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. And as Liz mentioned, as I briefly mentioned, we are all members of the United Church of Christ Board of Directors. I currently serve as chair, and we all have been really engaged in the governance process that has brought us here today. So that's why we are your panelists today. And I'm now going to ask Liz to open us up in prayer.
Thanks, Julia. Let us breathe in the presence of the Spirit as we come to God in prayer today. Good and gracious God, we come together in a spirit of union to lean into our future walk together. May this time be filled with grace and discernment as we uncover what comes next for us and unpack the feelings surrounding that. Help us be mindful of our mutual care for each other. Help us keep a spirit of collaboration. And we raise our hearts in thanks for those gathered and scattered, and those who lead us today, and for the gifts that you so generously provide each of us this day and always. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thanks, Liz, for that beautiful prayer. And I may ask you to email that to me because that was really nice. Once again, my name's Kate. And again, thank you all so much for joining us on this webinar. First, we want to talk about the proposed changes to director terms and also proposed changes to the General Synod nominating committee. So why are we bringing this up? We're bringing this up, and it will be in two separate votes at General Synod, because in General Synod 2023, that was in Indianapolis, when we made changes to the Constitution and ByLaws, during that time, we heard a lot of feedback, and we as the UCC Board, that there was some concerns about the length of changes. And that folks were concerned that, one, we'd have a hard time recruiting folks, and two, that it was just a really long time for people to serve. And folks were concerned about 9 years and those types of things. And so the UCC board really did listen and take notes, and we sent this to the governance committee, which I serve on. And we worked really hard to kind of figure out how can we address these concerns about term length for both the UCC board and the nominating committee, and how can we be fair, because in 2023 we elected a class that expires in 2031, and I'm one of those people. Liz, I believe, is one of those people as well. So it would affect our terms and our commitments that we had already made. So we're going to get into a little bit more about that, and just so everyone understands that because these are changes to the bylaws, it will require a 2/3 majority vote on each of these items for both changing the director term and the nominating committee terms for those to pass. So I think we have a couple of slides that talk about the proposed changes, and we're going to start off talking about the director terms. So we have currently 3 classes that have been elected to serve on behalf of the United Church of Christ denomination. Right now, as it's set up, we have a group that will expire in 2031 that will serve roughly 9 years. And there was no perfect solution that we could find when we were trying to figure out how to address the concerns, because the way the bylaws are worded, it's director terms are based on a certain number of synods. So when, up to 2023, synods were biannual, so every 2 years. So you would serve for 3 synod terms equaling 6 years. Well, we kept the 3 synod terms, but now that we're moving to triannual general synods, that would mean that a UCC board member would serve for 9. So what we have decided to do is to change the bylaw wording so that it will be 2 synods. So it will still be 6 years, but it gets a little complicated or a little wonky, I guess, maybe, in how we do this transition from the folks that have already been elected to to how we will do elections for going on. So you see that there's this proposed changes to the directors. It talks about different classes. So I'm currently in the original class of 2031. I'm going to be dropped down to the new class of 2028. And then we will elect a new class of going forward for 2023 and then 2025 as well. You'll see that we will be having up to 6 folks that are up to the original class of 2031 that can stay on the UCC board to help with maintaining some of that institutional knowledge, and also that way we're not necessarily throwing new members to the board to being chairs of some of our important committees like the governance committee, our finance committee, and those types of things. We want folks to come in and have some time so they can really learn and get their feet on the ground and understand all the jargon and terms that we use. And we just want to be nice to people, who have volunteered their time to serve on the UCCB. And so that will be kind of what the transition will look like. We have discussed this as the larger board. Governance has worked on this, and we all feel pretty comfortable with these changes, that this is the best solution we could come up. Because if we had just dropped folks, like everyone who was in the original class of 2031, the nominating committee would have had to replace like 18 individuals. And that is a lot of work for the General Synod nominating committee. So shameless plug, we're always looking for folks willing to serve at the national board and on the nominating committee. So if you're interested, talk to your conference minister and those types of things. So I think there's a couple other slides that we have for proposed changes, but I think that's the main one. So that's at least for the director's terms. Are there any questions regarding the changes for the UCC director terms? I'm double checking the Q&A and I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A. And if you have something and we've moved on, please feel free to go back and put it in the question and answer tab there, and we will definitely get back to it. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So the next proposed set of director term changes comes from United Church Funds. They also, they specifically have asked that we decouple their director terms from General Synod to make their term for their director specifically 6 years. And again, this was discussed by the United Church of Christ Board of Directors in conjunction with representatives from United Church Funds. And again, we felt as a board that this is very important, that we honor this request because, again, with the changes in the length of in between synods and those types of things, it helps with them with their turnover as well for directors. So again, that will be its own separate vote, that will require 2/3 majority. So any questions about director term lengths or anything like that that we can answer for you? I'll give you all another opportunity here. We'll check the Q&A. Can we talk about the transitional class? Sure. So the transitional class will be up to 6 folks who are in the original class of 2031, and they are folks who will be identified as potential individuals to be chairpersons of our standing committees like governance, finance, and those committees that are pretty important and do a lot of very vital work for the United Church of Christ. And so the reason why we're offering that transitional class is so we're allowing for some institutional knowledge to stick around and be passed on from individuals. You know, as this is my coming to the end of my first term, first synod term as a board member, and it has been so vital that I've been able to ask questions and say, so I'm reading minutes that say this, can you tell me how you got to this decision? And having folks that were in those meetings has been just really eye-opening and very insightful to help understand where we've come and where folks hoped that the board would be going in the future. And then again, also, we just don't want to necessarily put any new person in a position where they might wind up having to be chair of a committee. We try not to do that when we look at who fits which committees and those types of things. But, you know, we want people to have some time so they can kind of onboard to the roles and responsibilities of the UCCB and understand what all we're asking folks for sure. So I hope that answers your question. Any others?
There's a similar transitional class for the nominating committee as well, which you can see on this slide. And again, really wanting to make sure that there's that institutional knowledge that continues as we transition to this new structure.
I don't think I'm seeing any other questions.
I'm not either, Kate. Thank you so much for sharing this with us and getting us started.
Thanks. And we're going to turn it over to Julia.
So I am going to talk about the proposed Constitution and bylaws changes that are connected to unified governance. And I do want to mention that in the chat, Andrea has dropped in a link to the proposed constitutional and bylaws amendments. It includes a red line copy, and it also includes a frequently asked questions document that we put together. So, and she just repasted it. So just want to encourage you to also click on that link, save it if you'd like to continue to explore what we're talking about in this moment, or if it'd be easier for you to look at that in a separate window. As an overview, talking about these changes connected to unified governance, we're talking about 2 different votes at General Synod. There will first be a motion about proposed changes to the Constitution. And then if the changes that are proposed to the Constitution pass, there will be another motion to propose changes to the bylaws. Each of these pieces of business require a 2/3 majority vote to pass, just like the bylaws amendments that Kate was discussing. Once these are passed, after passage at General Synod, the Constitution amendments must be ratified by 2/3 of the conferences at their annual meetings between General Synod 2025 and General Synod 2028. Those amendments have to be ratified before the changes would become effective. And so again, that's a high-level overview of that process piece when we're talking about these two different votes that are connected, but also are nevertheless separate. So what we are a couple, again, high-level pieces of information that I think are really important before we get into some more history. These changes are not going to impact the elections of associate general ministers in 2025 or 2026. We have a candidate for associate general minister who is up for election at General Synod 35, Reverend Sherry Presteman. And so we will vote on her nomination this summer. We also will reopen the search for the second associate general minister position and aim to have a specially called General Synod, which will involve present existing delegates and a special Zoom General Synod for which the only business will be to act on the proposed nomination of some future candidate that has yet to be identified to serve in that other associate general minister role. So again, the changes that are proposed here do not impact either of those elections. Under the proposed changes, the associate general ministers will continue to attend to their bodies of work. They're important parts of our United Church of Christ, and they perform and do such incredible work. It provides such important leadership for the United Church of Christ. That will continue. Upon ratification, the associate general ministers would no longer be elected by General Synod, nor would they serve as directors on the United Church of Christ Board of Directors. And so to get us into how we came forward with this proposal, I'm going to give us a bit of a history lesson. I am not a polity teacher, but I aim to do well, and I passed polity very well. So hopefully all of my polity nerds out here will appreciate this history. The national ministries of the United Church of Christ is comprised of several corporate instruments. And so when we think about that word corporate, somebody asked during the first webinar, I mentioned, that's such corporate language. It seems counterintuitive when we're talking about church, but we are a nonprofit organization. And in order for us to do payroll and accept donations and handle our endowment, all of those sorts of things require us to have corporate entity status, right? So the national ministries is comprised of several corporate instruments or instrumentalities. Since 1957, there have been at least 11 instrumentalities for the UCC that have all fallen under this national ministries group. Those typically relate to our predecessor denominations, right? So again, at different points in time, different instrumentalities, at one point, at least 11. So this is a lot of different corporate entities to manage. So when you think about reporting that might need to be done, different states under whose laws we need to be making sure that we're following, that's a lot of different moving pieces. And so in 2000, the United Church of Christ underwent a pretty significant restructure. And there were 4 instrumentalities that survived, and they are called the covenanted ministries, right? And so these names will sound very familiar to you. Justice and Witness Ministries, Local Church Ministries, Office of General Ministries, and Wider Church Ministries. Each of these is a corporate organization. And at the 2000 restructure, they retained separate governance structures for each of the covenanted ministries. So while Liz, Kate, Janice, and I all serve on the United Church of Christ Board of Directors, back in 2000 and for some time thereafter, people would be serving on boards for each one of these instrumentalities. So you would basically quadruple or more the number of people serving on boards. In 2013, and basically at the request of General Synod, because from this point on, there was an understanding that this was unwieldy to have that many different boards, that many different pieces undertaking governance. And so General Synod directed the board to propose unified governance. And so in 2013, the United Church of Christ Board of Directors became the single board for the covenanted ministries. And at that point in time, the general minister and president was named the president of each of the four corporate entities. So for each of the covenanted ministries. At that point in time, we didn't have associate general ministers, we had executive ministers. And the executive ministers were named vice presidents for each of those corporate entities. And so again, this is 2013. We're getting close to the current decade, I promise. But again, there was still additional work to be done. And in 2017, General Synod voted us into the current structure that we have. General Synod voted to eliminate the Collegium of Officers, to unify executive leadership within the General Minister and President's office. Instead of executive ministers, we then had associate general ministers. The associate general minister portfolios are assigned by the general minister and president, and it is the general minister and president who is to be held accountable for the budgets of the covenanted ministries and for all of the HR decisions. So previously, each covenanted ministry had an executive minister who had been the president of that corporate entity. Once we got to 2013, the general minister and president became the president of all the covenanted ministries. And once we get to 2017, the collegium was eliminated and all executive leadership was moved into the general minister and president's office. And so that's kind of what we have been operating under until this point in time, and kind of where this proposal comes out of. There are, residual components of our former structures that impede unified governance, and this primarily connects into accountability. The associate general ministers are not held accountable by General Synod for their budgets. The budget is within the general minister and president's office. The associate general ministers are not held accountable by General Synod for any sort of human resources decision. Again, those are all being done by the general minister and president. And since General Synod no longer holds the AGMs accountable, their election is no longer necessary. General Synod, though, continues to hold that accountability the same way that it has with the general minister and president, right? That accountability doesn't change. What happens is there's greater clarity. The associate general ministers, they retain their portfolios of work, they retain their important positions within the life of the United Church of Christ. And at this point in time, it clarifies again, the structure that we're already under, that the person to be held accountable for all of those budgetary and HR decisions is the general minister and president. And so the United Church of Christ Board of Directors acts on behalf of the General Synod when General Synod is not in session. And so again, that continues the way that it has been since 2017. So that is a high-level overview. Last time we already had a bunch of questions popping up, and so I went straight into answering questions. But at the moment, I'm not seeing any open questions. And thank you. We've got our first questions. The first question is there a plan to hire more associate general ministers? And by that, I mean more than two. At this point in time, there's only two associate general ministers in plans. The one that we're proposing for election this summer, and the future person that we hope to find with our next search. In terms of what goes beyond that, I do not know of those plans. That would be up to the general minister and president in consultation with the board for future decisions. Great question, though. Here's another question. I am concerned about the ecclesiology with these proposed changes. There is a movement of centralized power which doesn't reflect my understanding of UCC ecclesiology. Could someone talk to the theology of these proposals, please? Thank you for this question. So when we think about shared power and shared authority across the United Church of Christ, this is shared power and authority between the General Synod, which acts through the national ministries and directs the national ministries' activity. So the General Synod, the conferences, and the associations, and the local church. Right? So this is where the power and authority is shared. And so while we do have a change in elected officers, again, that power is amongst those settings as opposed to those individual people. Now, I'm fully aware that, of course, people exercise power, but the primary thing when we think about that shared work of the church, that doesn't change. The shared work of the church is between the synod, the local church, the associations and conferences, and then the national ministries acting based on what they have been directed to do by the General Synod. So the next question is, presumably the elected AGMs will be retained in role once the constitution change becomes effective. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. The elected AGMs would have they would just not be elected now. Good question. I'll invite my panelists if you have anything else that you would like to add in, just hop on in there. The next question, if the general minister and president determines the portfolios of the AGMs, will their roles or titles change? That's a good question, and it's not one that I have information about. In terms of their role, the Associate General Minister role is not, there's no plans to change that role. Each of our AGMs has a significant portfolio of work that they direct. In terms of titles, we saw this over the last 2 years, a switch to the structure where we have an associate general minister for love of neighbor, associate general minister for love of church. So we've seen that type of title change already, but there's not necessarily any plans to have other types of changes. The next question, given that the General Minister and President is the global and national face of the United Church of Christ and all the places she must travel, is the budget and AR responsibilities a feasible burden for one person to assume? This is, they have already been assumed. This has been the role of the General Minister and President since 2017. So this is not a change in terms of those responsibilities and the burden that is borne there. At the same time, this is why we really think through how we support the General Minister and President and how they structure their office. And so simply because they are in charge of all of the budget and HR responsibilities, they are the person to be held accountable. That doesn't mean that they are the individual who is making every single decision. We have, again, our associate general ministers supervise a number of people. We have different directors who, again, have different pieces of responsibility of that. It's just ultimately that if there's something wrong there, right, the general minister and president is who is held accountable. And that's been the case since 2017. The next question, I think we have been electing associate general ministers for a specific length of time. Would the ones we are electing this cycle still have their length of term guaranteed? No, they would not. With the change from being elected to being not elected, that specific term is no longer applicable. However, I don't anticipate that there would be any particular change. Reverend Sherry Presteman who's been serving as the acting Associate General Minister for Love of Neighbor and who's our nominee for Associate General Minister of Love of Neighbor. So again, even though that length of term is not guaranteed, there is a big commitment that we make when we bring those nominees forth. The next question, how will this impact the staff at National, and will they be clearly supported in these proposed changes with support and guidance? Again, great question. And this is not different functionally than what has been happening since 2017. Again, the general minister and president since 2017 has been determining the portfolios of work for the associate general ministers. They have since 2017 been the person to be held accountable for HR and budget issues. So there's no change in terms of impacts on staff. We continue to create those opportunities so that we can respond to staff needs. They're engaged when we undertake our evaluation for the general minister and president. So again, great question. And there's no change now. That change occurred in 2017. The next question, if for any reason the GMP cannot complete a term, would we potentially end up with an unelected replacement? At least now, a replacement could be an elected associate general minister. Has this possibility been considered? This has been considered, and I'm going to invite our general counsel, Heather Kimmel, to respond to this because she is much more clear on all of those real specific ins and outs. So Heather?
Thank you, Julia. Hello, everyone. So if the GMP is not able to serve or unexpectedly steps down, currently the UCCB has to appoint an individual to serve as acting general minister and president. And the current bylaws provide that the UCCB appoints an acting GMP from among the AGMs. The proposed amendments provide that the United Church of Christ Board appoints an acting GMP, but it doesn't limit the choice to specific roles. So there could be a choice from among a number of different folks for that, but still including an associate general minister.
And of additional note, when there is a person serving as an acting in an acting role, that prompts the process for undertaking a search and bringing a new nominee to General Synod. So, if there's a lengthy period of time left in someone's term and they're no longer able to serve, we're not waiting until the end of that potential term before coming forward to General Synod. Plus, because we have the ability to call special synods for purposes of elections and other business like that, again, those are things that should something like this come about, we would undertake with all haste how we best approach those situations so that we might honor the church and support the church through that transition. The next question, do we yet know who would serve on the hiring committee for AGMs? Would that be a UCC responsibility? Currently, the national ministries, when they engage in hiring for a variety of positions. They put together search committees, sometimes specifically involving board members serving on those search committees, sometimes involving folks from, say, a conference minister or someone from CCM as part of that search process. And so, the anticipation, and this is, I believe, outlined more in the FAQ, is that the General Minister and President, in consultation with the United Church of Christ Board of Directors, would identify those search committees to undertake that hiring process. So, great question. Next up, there's a question about flowcharts, which I do love a flowchart. Are there flowcharts that show the current governance structure and proposed changes to the structure? I do not believe that we have a flowchart for this. Heather?
The charts that are attached to the FAQ relating to the change in the director terms we have, but there isn't a particular flow chart for this because the change is, there isn't really a flow to it. It's just removing the associate general ministers as elected officers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So thank you for this question, but there's not really a change in process other than the absence of a future election. All right, we've had a lot of great questions come through. I'm going to just speak for filler for a moment. So if folks have additional questions or need a clarification from anything that has been provided in terms of an answer, that way folks have just a minute to do so. I'm not going to sing for you though, because that's not fun for anyone. But I don't know why this is, riffing here in Lenexa, giving people time to add additional questions in. I do really want to thank all of you for being here. I know that hopping on a Zoom at whatever point in time of a day that you're in to talk about governance, this is a commitment and it's important service for the United Church of Christ. So I do want to encourage you once again, if you're thinking about applying to serve on the United Church of Christ Board of Directors or on the General Synod Nominating Committee, please be thinking about doing so, and that would be fantastic. I'm not sure what the question can I be. I'm not sure what you're indicating by that, but if you do have an additional question, feel free to type the full question. One other quick note, as you're preparing for General Synod, committee assignments are in the works. I know that people are excited to find out what committee that they'll be serving on. That will come out closer to July. Again, visit generalsynod.org to view the different resolutions that are coming forth in addition to this particular type of business. This is a great question. If someone is interested in serving on the board, can you reach out to one of us to learn more? Absolutely. My email address is floating around in a whole lot of spaces, but I'm going to drop my UCC one here in the chat. I would also encourage you, if you're interested in serving on the board more generally, to also reach out to the nominating committee as well. And do we have a nominating committee specific address?
I do not believe we do, but the best way to be to express interest in serving on a national committee is to let your conference minister know, because the conferences nominate folks for that too.
Absolutely. So yes, let your conference minister know that you're interested. Kate also just dropped her email address in the chat as well. So please feel free to reach out to us. And General Synod, The board we're all delegates as well. So we'll be on the floor, we'll be moving throughout all of the business and the fun for Synod. So please feel free to talk to us there, just to visit with us as well. There's a question about getting a flowchart example and how it would be helpful to see the flowchart for understanding more fully what we're talking about. For the director terms, for those two different proposed changes, there are charts in the FAQ that explain those in greater detail. In terms of the changes with unified governance, we don't have a flowchart because there's not a change that affects the flow of the organization. So it simply makes the associate general ministers no longer elected and no longer directors on the United Church of Christ board. So there's not a flow chart for that. I do think that the FAQ document, the frequently asked questions document that Andrea just linked to is really thorough and helpful. And so we also include in there, and you can reach out again via email if you have more specific questions or if you'd like to talk further about this, I'd be happy to do so as well. Let's see. There's a question about why it takes so long for delegates to get resolution assignments. And I know that we've had delegates in place for a long time and folks like to be prepared. Part of it is because May 31st is the deadline for resolutions that could not have been anticipated. And so, before May 31st, we had, I believe, 9 resolutions in place, but we've had additional resolutions come forward. We are up to 12 total resolutions now, but the newest resolutions still require action before they officially come forward. They've been vetted by the subcommittee on disposition, and then the board acts as the business committee for General Synod. And so we will take up those resolutions to determine how they're disposed of. Do they go to committee? Do they go straight to plenary? Do they go somewhere else? And so we make those assignments as fast as we can, but we do have to, as you can imagine, there's been a lot of stuff that could not have been anticipated that really requires this community's voice of faith to be responsive to. So that's in part why it takes so long to get those committee assignments, is because of those potential resolutions that could not have been anticipated. All right, I've got a long question here. And yes, the question was, sorry, it moved. It's my understanding that removing the election of AGMs from the bylaws does not preclude the church from following the established process of using search committees to identify a candidate for those positions, meaning that just because the AGMs would no longer be elected, it doesn't mean we won't continue using search committees for those positions and other positions that exist but are not mentioned in the bylaws. That is correct. We will still make use of those search committee processes as they are really important to identify the right folks to be in these incredibly important positions. Great question. We have so few resolutions. How will committee work with such large groups? As someone who, my first synod was 2019, committee work is kind of fascinating, and it does work. And I can't quite tell you how it all comes together, but our resolution process team does a fantastic job of training the committee chairs. We have liaisons from the board who also help out in those committees. and they spend a lot of different time together and work to kind of establish how to do the business of the committee. So there's a lot of really good instructions as the committees get underway that will really help clarify really how those large committees work. So again, it is remarkable how it comes together. And I know we're almost to Pentecost, but it just makes me think about just the Spirit being at work in all of those places. So it does work. And yes, it really does come together. Does the UCCB have a plan for how to proceed if the proposals do not pass? Last time we had a bylaws change, delegates were told there was not a plan B and pressured to vote for the proposals. Well, if the plan doesn't pass, if these proposals do not pass, then we revisit it. Then we, as a board, evaluate the feedback received. We evaluate the words that we're hearing from Synod about how we best take up the next piece of work, what that looks like, how that unfolds. When the structure change happened in 2017. Previously in 2015, there had been a proposal that did not pass. And then that was revisited and reworked and came together in 2017. 2 years ago, when we brought forth a proposal about changing the length of a Synod term from 2 years to 3 years, we heard directly from Synod about the concerns about the length of director terms that resulted from those proposed changes, which is in part why we have brought those first two proposals as well. So again, the work is dependent upon what happens at Synod, and that's okay. We are, I always like to think that in the United Church of Christ, we have, say on this call, 86 people and probably 3 times that many opinions, right? So it's okay for us to be engaged in heated discussion about what we really believe is best for the future of the church, and know that that continues to change and evolve. And that's how we will continue to stay relevant, both as a faith community, but as a really active case of democracy, right? That's so important now, especially now. So I hope that that helps answer that question. Someone asked, as a new UCC member, I've tuned in to try and understand governance, but wonder if there are other proposals already made that we can know about ahead of time, or does that wait until later in the summer? In terms of business to be acted on at General Synod, the proposed Constitution and ByLaws amendments that are being discussed here today, there won't be other proposed bylaws or constitutional amendments for consideration at Synod. For the resolutions, which are the kind of the big body of work that we take up at General Synod, you can review the resolutions at generalsynod.org. And when you are on that homepage where it shows business, you can click over and you can see those resolutions as well. In terms of more governance history, there's a lot of great resources on ucc.org that talk about governance and polity. And there's a brief history of the UCC that I think is super useful. It's something that I share with folks who are considering becoming members of our church. We've got 2 new members joining in June, which is very exciting. But when we think about, like how all of this works together. I came from a very different denomination that didn't quite have the same sort of covenantal polity that we have. And so, those are some resources that have been helpful to me, over the course of my time in the UCC, but then also resources that I share with other folks. So I'll see if I can find that, or perhaps somebody else can find that link and drop it into the web or into the chat. So great questions. All right, friends. Thank you for coming up with more questions. It's a lot of fun to see how folks' brains are working and what are the things that are on people's minds and hearts. And I really just thoroughly appreciate you spending the time doing this. It really means a lot. It's really important for the church. As we're coming close to our time, I'm going to bring us into a prayer for closing. And I'm sharing a prayer from Stating Our Faith in Urgent Times, which is produced by our Still Speaking writers group, the folks who do, our daily devotions and all that sort of stuff. It's something that you can get at Pilgrim Press. They'll be available at Synod as well. But this was produced, it became available at the last Synod. And I just think this is a really powerful prayer for this time and place. So please join me in a spirit of prayer. Holy God, we believe in you, God beyond all names, love unending. Everything comes from you. Nothing falls outside your care. You command justice and judge with mercy. Made in your image, we are your delight. We believe in you, Christ Jesus, Mary's child, one with God and us. You went through the world doing good. You loved the company of sinners and called us friends. You spoke truth to the mighty. We killed you on a cross. You pardoned us with your last breath. In deepest mystery, God gave you new life, the life we live when we follow you. We believe in you, Holy Spirit, wind and flame. You give insight and dreams, bold words, resilience and courage for each day. You bind us in love. Your presence is joy. Your light leads us home. Cleaned in the waters, fed at the table, surrounded by saints, we resist evil, love our neighbors, and forgive our enemies, so that the world might know that you are good, God beyond all names, Christ Jesus, Holy Spirit, one, loving, and just. Amen. Thank you again, and thank you, Mary Ludi, for those beautiful words. Have a wonderful evening. See you in Kansas City.